You ever feel the world shift beneath your feet, like the ground isn't quite steady anymore? I thought that only happened in earthquakes, until the night I saw Lily's phone light up with his name. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't looking for trouble. But when a man sees the name Eric pop up at midnight with a text that says, "I miss you too," it's like someone drags a blade across his chest, slow and deliberate. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until the light faded and my lungs burned. My wife, the woman carrying my child, was lying peacefully next to me, her breathing soft and steady. She looked like someone who hadn't just blown my entire life apart. "Babe, you've been working late a lot," I said, casually swirling my coffee as Lily packed her purse for the day. She paused for a second, her hand lingering on the kitchen counter. I caught it, the brief hesitation, but then she laughed. "Yeah, but the deadlines are brutal, you know how it is." She kissed my cheek, her lips warm against my skin. But there was something off, like a subtle chill beneath the warmth. I tried to shake it off. God knows I wasn't the paranoid type. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 5, and she was now 6 months pregnant with our first child. We weren't perfect, but who is? I loved her, trusted her. So when she smiled and said, "I'll make it up to you this weekend," I believed her. But then the weekend came and went, and Lily spent most of it on her phone, texting someone with that little smile she used to reserve for me. I was working late myself, tapping away at my laptop while Lily sat across the living room scrolling through her phone. The glow of the screen lit up her face, and she looked so damn focused, I couldn't help but wonder who or what had her so engrossed. "Who's keeping you entertained?" I asked with a teasing smile, but even as I said it I could feel the weight behind the words. She barely glanced up. "Oh, just Amy. She's having drama with her boyfriend again." Amy was her best friend and perpetual drama queen, so it wasn't out of character. But when Lily laughed at something on the screen and quickly locked her phone before setting it down, my stomach twisted. "I'll head to bed," she said, stretching. "You coming?" "Soon," I replied, my eyes lingering on her phone as she disappeared into the bedroom. I hated the feeling building in my chest, this gnawing, unwelcome suspicion. I was better than this. Better than those guys who jumped to conclusions without evidence, right? Still, I couldn't stop myself. Once the bedroom door clicked shut, I grabbed her phone. Locked. Of course. But I knew her passcode. It was my birthday. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Was I really going to do this? Invade her privacy? Before I could decide, her phone vibrated in my hand. The name Eric flashed across the screen, followed by a message. "Can't stop thinking about earlier. When can we meet again?" I stared at the message until the letters blurred. My hands shook, my breath shallow and ragged. This wasn't Amy. This wasn't some innocent conversation. I put the phone back exactly where I found it and walked to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My reflection stared back at me in the mirror, pale and hollow-eyed, as the truth slowly sank in. "You didn't sleep well," Lily said, running her fingers through my hair as I sat at the kitchen table. "Is everything okay?" I forced a smile, even though my chest felt like it was caving in. "Just work stress," she nodded sympathetically. "We both need a vacation once the baby's here." The mention of the baby made my throat tighten. I wanted to believe it was mine. I wanted to believe this was all just a misunderstanding. But the way she smiled at me so effortlessly, so convincingly, it made my skin crawl. How long had she been lying to me? I couldn't confront her yet, not without more. So I played along. I kissed her goodbye, told her I loved her, and watched her walk out the door. Then I followed her. Lily worked at an advertising firm downtown, and I parked across the street, waiting. She always stayed late, but tonight I wasn't interested in her usual routine. I wanted to see who Eric was. An hour passed. 2. Then, just as I was starting to think I'd wasted my time, I saw her leave the building, not alone, but with a man. Tall, athletic, with that cocky grin I'd recognize anywhere. Eric. They didn't kiss, but they didn't need to. The way he touched her lower back as they walked, the way she leaned into him, it was enough to confirm what I already knew. I followed them to a small cafe a few blocks away. They sat by the window talking, laughing, their heads too close, for comfort. My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms as I watched the woman I thought I knew betray me right in front of my eyes. But the worst part? She looked happy. Happier than she'd been with me in months. I stayed long enough to see them leave together, Eric's hand lingering on her waist as they disappeared down the street. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this just emotional, or had it already gone physical? When I got home, I poured myself a drink and sat in the dark waiting for her to return. My mind replayed every interaction we'd had over the past few months, searching for the signs I'd missed. The late nights, the secretive texts, the sudden distance. It was all so obvious now, like a puzzle I hadn't known I was supposed to solve. By the time she walked through the door, it was almost midnight. "Hey," she said, her voice casual, like she hadn't just been out with another man. I didn't respond, just watched her slip off her shoes and head toward the bedroom. I could have confronted her right then and there, but I wasn't ready. I needed more proof. Something undeniable. And I knew exactly where to start, because if the baby wasn't mine, this wasn't just betrayal. It was a level of deception I couldn't forgive. I waited until the next night to confront her. My thoughts had kept me up, twisting and churning as I tried to make sense of how the woman I loved could betray me like this. Every time I pictured her and Eric together, that text flashing in my mind, I felt like I couldn't breathe. But tonight, I was ready. She was sitting on the couch, her legs curled up under her, scrolling through her phone. "Hey," she said without looking up. "Dinner's almost ready. I put the chicken in the oven." I stayed by the doorway, hands buried in my pockets to keep them from shaking. "Who's Eric, Lily?" Her head snapped up, and for a moment the room went completely silent, except for the hum of the oven. She blinked, as if she hadn't heard me. "Eric?" she repeated, feigning confusion. I stepped closer. "Don't play dumb. You know who I'm talking about. I saw the text. I know you've been meeting him." Her face paled, but she quickly recovered, putting on that familiar mask of composure. "Oh my God, Ethan. Are you seriously spying on me now?" She laughed, but it was forced, the sound cutting through the air like a knife. "That's ridiculous." "Don't do that," I said, my voice low and controlled. "Don't turn this around like I'm the problem. I saw you with him. At the cafe. I saw how close you were." Her smile faded, and for the first time I saw cracks in her armor. "Okay," she admitted, setting her phone down carefully. "I had coffee with Eric. So what? He's a coworker. I didn't think I had to run every meeting by you." "You weren't at a meeting," I snapped. "You were touching each other, laughing like teenagers sneaking around. Don't insult my intelligence." Her eyes flashed with anger. "Touching each other? Are you hearing yourself right now? I can't believe you're this insecure." "Insecure?" I took a step closer, heat rising in my chest. "I'm not insecure. I'm observant. I saw the way you looked at him, the way you used to look at me before everything changed." My throat tightened, but I pushed through the lump. "Just tell me the truth, Lily. If you care about me at all, tell me the truth." Her lips trembled, but she quickly wiped at her eyes, as if the tears threatened to betray her. "There's nothing to confess, Ethan," she whispered. "You're overreacting. I've been stressed. I've been tired. But I haven't done anything wrong." "You've done everything wrong," I said, my voice breaking. "You've been lying to me for months. Do you even know how that feels?" Her face contorted with guilt, or maybe just frustration. She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself like she was trying to protect what little control she had left. "You don't get it, do you? I've been drowning. You've been so caught up in work and planning for the baby that you stopped seeing me. And Eric, he was just someone to talk to." "To talk to?" I echoed bitterly. "Is that what you call it? Late-night texts, secret meetups, I miss you messages, just talking?" I shook my head, anger boiling over. "How stupid do you think I am?" She flinched, but her eyes narrowed. "I never said I was perfect, okay? But you're acting like I had some grand affair when it wasn't like that. It wasn't serious." "Then why hide it from me?" I demanded. "Why lie? If it wasn't serious, why not tell me from the beginning?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her silence was the answer I didn't want to hear. I felt like the walls were closing in, suffocating me. My hands trembled as I tried to steady myself. "And the baby?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is it mine?" Her eyes filled with tears, and I saw something flicker across her face. Fear, regret, maybe even shame. "Of course it's yours," she said quickly, too quickly. I didn't believe her. "I'm getting a DNA test," I said firmly, stepping back as if I needed the distance to keep from falling apart. "If you're telling the truth, you have nothing to worry about. But if you're lying, Lily, you better be prepared for what comes next," she gasped, covering her mouth as a sob escaped. "How could you even say that to me?" "Because I don't trust you anymore," I replied, my voice cold. "You destroyed that trust the second you let him into our lives." She crumpled onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't mean to hurt you." I felt my chest tighten, the weight of her words pressing down on me. For a moment, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was just a horrible mistake and that we could fix it. But the image of Eric touching her, her laughter as they leaned into each other, burned in my mind like a brand. "You should have thought of that before," I said, turning away. "Wait!" she cried, running after me and grabbing my arm. "Please, don't do this. Don't ruin us over a misunderstanding." I shook her off, my heart pounding. "You ruined us, Lily, not me." She stood frozen in the hallway, her sobs echoing as I walked into the bedroom and slammed the door shut. I woke up to the smell of coffee, but it didn't bring the comfort it usually did. When I walked into the kitchen, Lily was sitting at the table, her eyes puffy and red, her hands wrapped around a mug like it was the only thing holding her together. "I called out of work," she said softly. "We need to talk." I sat down across from her, the tension between us so thick it was suffocating. "I made mistakes," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But it wasn't what you think. I never slept with him." I stared at her, searching, her face for any sign of the truth. "And I'm supposed to believe that after everything else you've lied about?" "I'm telling you the truth now," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, Ethan, don't let this be the end of us. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can do whatever it takes. Just don't give up on me." A moment. I considered it. The woman sitting in front of me wasn't the cold, distant version I'd been dealing with for months. She was the woman I married, the one I'd built a life with. But then I remembered the text, the late nights, the look on her face when she thought I didn't know. "I already scheduled the DNA test," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Until those results come back, there's nothing to fix." Her shoulders shook as she sobbed into her hands. I felt like a monster watching her break down, but I couldn't afford to be soft anymore. She made her choices, and now we both had to live with the consequences. I stood up, leaving her at the table. As I walked away, her sobs grew quieter, fading into the background like static. There was no going back now. The damage was done, and I wasn't sure if I even wanted to pick up the pieces. The day I got the results of the DNA test was the day everything inside me snapped into focus. I sat in my car, the envelope trembling in my hands as I ripped it open. My heart raced, part of me still clinging to the hope that this nightmare would end, that Lily's betrayal hadn't gone as far as I feared. But there it was, in black and white. Probability of paternity, 0%. I stared at the paper, the words blurring through the tears I refused to shed. My wife, the woman I had loved, trusted, and built my life around, was carrying another man's child. And she had been lying to my face, night after night, while I stayed up worrying about our future. Something inside me shifted. The pain I felt hardened into something cold, calculated. I wasn't going to beg her to explain herself. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of manipulating me again. No. She wanted to ruin my life. I'd make sure she regretted every second of it. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to leave her life in shambles. That night, I walked into the house like nothing had happened. Lily was sitting on the couch, watching TV, a blanket draped over her legs. She looked up when I entered, her face still puffy from the tears she'd been shedding for days. She'd been begging me to trust her, to work things out. But I'd been distant, giving her just enough hope to keep her off guard. "Hey," she said softly. "Did you get the results back?" Her voice was laced with fear. She already knew the truth. I forced a smile. "Yeah. Everything's fine." Relief washed over her face, and she let out a shaky breath. "Oh, thank God. I knew you'd see that I wasn't lying. Ethan, we can fix this." I sat down next to her, taking her hand in mine. "I know we can. I'm sorry for doubting you. I've been under so much stress, and I think it made me see things that weren't there." Her lips quivered, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "I've missed you so much," she whispered, leaning into me. I wrapped my arms around her, stroking her hair, and she sobbed into my chest. But while she cried, my mind was already working. I was going to give her a few days of peace, just enough for her to think we were out of the woods. And then I'd drop the bomb. The first step was making sure she had nowhere to hide when the truth came out. I contacted a lawyer the next morning, filing for divorce and securing proof of her infidelity and the paternity test. Every detail was documented. My lawyer told me we had enough to leave her with nothing, and I couldn't wait to see her face when she realized it. In the meantime, I played my role perfectly. We went to dinner, held hands in public, and I even brought home flowers one night to keep up the charade. She thought I was hers again, but every time she smiled at me, all I could see was Eric's hands on her, the texts, the lies. But the real twist came when she tried to flip the script on me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, going over some paperwork, when Lily came in, her face tense. She set her phone down and crossed her arms. "We need to talk." I leaned back, raising an eyebrow. "What's on your mind?" "I know about you and Sarah." For a moment, I was genuinely confused. "Sarah?" She nodded, her eyes narrowing. "Don't play dumb, Ethan. I saw the texts. I know you've been talking to her behind my back. It took everything in me not to laugh. Sarah was a friend from work, someone I texted maybe once or twice about a project. But I knew what Lily was doing. She was trying to make me the villain, to distract me from what she had done. "There's nothing going on with Sarah," I said calmly. "But nice try." Lily's face turned red and her voice rose. "Don't lie to me, Ethan. You've been distant for months. How do I know you weren't seeing her while I was working late?" I stood up, towering over her. "You really want to go there, Lily? Because we both know who's been sneaking around." Her lip trembled, but she didn't back down. "You don't get to play the victim when you've probably been cheating too." I laughed bitterly. "You've got some nerve. I have the proof, Lily. I have the texts, the pictures, the DNA test. You want to know what it said?" I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. "The baby isn't mine." She staggered back as if I'd slapped her, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. "Ethan, please, I can explain." "No," I cut her off. "You had your chance to explain, and you lied, over and over. But now you don't get to say anything." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she choked out. "Eric was just there when I needed someone, and I made a mistake. But I love you, Ethan. Please don't do this." I shook my head, feeling nothing but cold detachment. "Love? You don't love me. You love what I provided for you. A house, stability, a future. But you threw it all away." Her cries filled the room, but I didn't care. "The divorce papers will be ready tomorrow," I said. "You'll be getting nothing from me." "No." "House, no money, no support. You can't do this," she screamed. "I'm carrying a child." I leaned down, meeting her tear-filled eyes. "Not mine. Let Eric take care of you now." Her face crumpled, and for a second I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the months of lies, the nights I stayed up worrying while she was out with him, and the sympathy disappeared. The divorce was finalized within weeks. Lily tried to fight it, claiming I was being cruel and heartless, but the evidence was stacked against her. Eric didn't even show up to support her during the hearings, and by the end, she was left with nothing. I sold the house, packed my things, and started fresh in a new apartment. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and it was free of her. Betrayal. One night while unpacking, I got a message from a mutual friend. Lily had moved in with her parents. Apparently, Eric had ghosted her, leaving her to raise the baby alone. I didn't feel sorry for her. She made her bed, and now she could lie in it. As I sat on my couch staring out at the city lights, a strange mix of emotions washed over me. I should have felt victorious. I had taken back control of my life, exposed the lies, and left her with the consequences of her choices. But there was no satisfaction, no real joy, just a quiet, heavy emptiness. Betrayal leaves scars, and I knew mine would take time to heal. But at least now, I had a chance to heal. I took a deep breath, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat back down, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. And that's when the thought hit me. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you have forgiven her? Or do you think my revenge was exactly what she deserved?